These are the 7 levels of wicked football players. Level 1, the nuisance. Vinnie Jones is what happens when someone mistakes aggression for ability and a football pitch for a building site. There is no tactical master plan with Vinnie Jones. There's no clinical calculation, no psychological edge, no genius buried under the thuggery. What you get is exactly what you see. A bricklayer turned midfielder. Jones made 184 Premier League appearances and collected 7 red cards, which works out to the fewest games any player has ever needed to hit that number. More impressively, he holds the record for the most reds in a single Premier League season, 3 of them in 1995-96, which means he was suspended for roughly a quarter of the year and still came back to do it again. The fastest yellow card in the history of English League football also belongs to him, earned 3 seconds into an FA Cup tie against Sheffield United in 1992 when he clattered Dane Whitehouse before most of the crowd had finished sitting down. 12 career red cards in total, in an era where referees were actively lenient, in a game where the rules specifically allowed tackles from behind. 12. What separates Jones from everyone else on this list is that he was never actually good enough for this to be controversial. He wasn't a world-class talent with a self-destructive streak. He was a decent midfielder with maximum volume and 0 regret. You couldn't be angry at him the way you could be angry at players who should have known better. Jones was who he told you he was, from the first whistle to the last. He left football and became a Hollywood villain, playing mob enforcers with the same energy he'd brought to Wimbledon's midfield. In retrospect, the film career was inevitable. Jones had always been performing, but Jones was the warm-up act, a man who scared people with presence. What comes next is a man who scared people because you never quite knew when the switch was going to flip, and when it did, it didn't stop at one incident. It went on until the career itself became the casualty. Level 2. The hothead Joey Barton is what happens when you give a midfield enforcer a Twitter account, a grudge, and absolutely 0 impulse control. The talent was real. At his best, Barton could carry a midfield, pick a pass, and dictate tempo with the kind of authority that made scouts write enthusiastic reports. 6 Premier League clubs across 14 years, 1 England cap, 2 promotions. The technical ability to hold a ball under pressure and the footballing intelligence to know where it should go next. None of that is what anyone remembers. They remember the cigar. In 2004, at Manchester City's training ground, Barton stubbed a lit cigar into the eye of teammate Ousmane Dabo during a preseason session. Dabo needed emergency treatment. Barton was fined 6 weeks' wages. The cigar belonged to him. He had been smoking it during training. The details don't get better the closer you look. They remember the prison sentence. In 2008, Barton was convicted of common assault and a fray following a nightclub incident in Liverpool city centre. He served 74 days of a 6-month sentence. He came back to football, signed for Newcastle United, and continued exactly as before. QPR needed a result at Manchester City to avoid relegation. With his team fighting for survival in the 55th minute, Barton elbowed Carlos Tevez in the face and was sent off. Then, on the way to the tunnel, and he kicked Sergio Aguero in the back of the knee. Then he attempted to headbutt Vincent Kompany. He had to be physically dragged off the pitch by Micah Richards. He later admitted he was trying to take one of their players with me. QPR somehow avoided relegation regardless. The FA banned him for 12 matches and fined him £75,000. The club stripped him of the captaincy and fined him a further 6 weeks' wages, around £500,000. 12 matches, £500,000, and still somehow more clubs. Barton was football's cautionary tale told in real time, season after season, with everyone watching and no one able to stop it. The next level didn't make headlines for fighting, though. He made them for something football had no rule book for, something you can see coming and still can't quite believe when it happens. Level 3. The spitter El Hadji Diouf is the only man who managed to get himself banned by police, charged by UEFA, condemned by his own manager, and despised by every fan base he touched, while also winning 2 African Footballer of the Year awards and being named by Pelé in his list of the greatest 125 living players. The talent existed. Anyone who watched the 2002 World Cup saw it. Diouf tore through defenders with pace and invention, inspired Senegal to one of the biggest upsets in the tournament's history against reigning champions France, and played his way into a £10 million move to Liverpool. He was exactly the kind of player Anfield spent years trying to find. And then he spat on a Celtic fan on live television. March 2003, camera rolling, crowd watching 87th minute. Diouf leaned into the advertising hoardings and spat at a Celtic supporter. He was charged with assault, fined 2 weeks' wages, given a 2-match UEFA ban, fined £5,000 by a Glasgow court, and cost Liverpool an additional £60,000 in charitable donations to a local club. If you measure a player's wickedness purely by the scale of contempt they generated from people who'd never even met them, Diouf wins this level without contest. Neil Warnock, who has never been short of opinions about anyone, called him lower than a sewer rat after Diouf was caught taunting an injured Jamie Mackie, standing over him shouting, "Fuck you and fuck your leg," while the Scotland forward lay on the pitch with a double leg fracture. Jamie Carragher, who played alongside him at Liverpool, described him as last pick in the five-a-sides within weeks and the worst professional he shared a dressing room with. He scored 6 goals in 2 seasons at Liverpool. He is, in his home country of Senegal, still mobbed in the streets as a national hero. What Diouf weaponized wasn't a tackle or a stamp. It was contempt itself, turned into a full-time occupation. But the next level turned something far more specific into a weapon. Something coaches called elite, supporters called criminal, and rivals called simply terrifying. Level 4, the predator Diego Costa, is what happens when you take elite striker instincts and wire them to a hair trigger that's been set off permanently inside a pressure cooker. 58 goals in 120 appearances for Chelsea, 2 Premier League titles. He arrived at Stamford Bridge in 2014 and immediately scored 20 league goals in his debut season, playing every game like it was the first 5 minutes of a derby. He had pace, strength, finishing, a talent for turning defenders into nervous wrecks before he'd even touched the ball. Eden Hazard and Cesc Fabregas were providing the service. Costa was converting it with the efficiency of a man who treated the penalty area like a personal workshop. He was also stamping on people. The incident against Liverpool in the 2015 Capital One Cup semi-final is the case study. In a single match, Costa came down on Emre Can's ankle, stepped on Martin Skirtle's head, squared up to Steven Gerrard, and was accused by the referee of diving. None of these incidents drew a card. Arsene Wenger, watching from the opposition dugout and clearly building towards something, called him disgusting. His Chelsea career ended not with a ban or a tribunal, but with a text message. Antonio Conte informed him over the summer of 2017 that he was no longer required, via his phone, without so much as a call. Costa spent weeks refusing to train with Atletico Madrid until the transfer was confirmed, turning his exit into one final act of defiance. The manager, who had won a league title with him, fired him by text. Costa's response was to refuse to leave until he was good and ready. You cannot manufacture that kind of chaos. It has to be natural. Costa's villainy was genuine, which is exactly why it works so well. When you wear the shirt and fight for the club and score the goals, while also doing all the other things, opposition fans can hate you without reservation, because you've given them every reason to. Costa was the Premier League's perfect villain for 3 years. Then the teeth appeared. Level 5, the cannibal Luis Suarez, is what happens when you take a top 5 striker of his generation and forget to tell him that biting people is still a red card offense, not a tactical option. He bit someone at Ajax in 2010. 7-game ban. He bit Branislav Ivanovic on the arm during a Premier League game for Liverpool against Chelsea in April 2013. 10-game ban. He bit Giorgio Chiellini on the shoulder during a World Cup group stage match between Uruguay and Italy in June 2014. 3 bites. 3 separate countries, 3 separate regulatory bodies, a combined total that made him the first player in modern football history to be banned for the same offense 3 times across different competitions. The third ban was 9 international matches, plus 4 months from all football activities, handed down after FIFA reviewed the incident from 34 camera angles and specifically rejected Suarez's defense that he lost his balance and Chiellini's shoulder fell into his face. It is important to understand the full sequence of events in the Chiellini incident. When Suarez lunged at the Italian defender's shoulder, made contact, and then immediately fell to the ground, clutching his own teeth as if he himself had been struck. Chiellini, who had just been bitten, lowered his shirt to show the referee the teeth marks on his shoulder. The referee saw nothing. Uruguay won the resulting corner, scored from it, qualified for the knockout stage, and eliminated Italy. Suarez spent the next 24 hours insisting nothing had happened before the suspension was announced, and he was immediately transferred to Barcelona for £75 million. But here is the paradox, and it matters. 2 European Golden Shoes, a Premier League Golden Boot, PFA Players Player of the Year, over 600 career goals, an output per game that places him among the most prolific strikers the sport has ever produced. The biting was never the whole story. The biting was 3 incidents across a 15-year career that generated more column inches than everything else combined because of what it was and when it happened. Suarez was chaos with a world-class finishing touch. What comes next wasn't chaos. It was something colder and more calculated. For the player who committed the worst tackle in Premier League history, wrote about it in a book, paid £150,000 because of what he wrote, and has never once said he was sorry. Level 6. The executioner Roy Keane is what happens when a world-class midfielder nurses a grudge for 4 years, picks the exact right moment, and then documents the whole thing in a best-selling autobiography. The backstory starts in September 1997 at Elland Road. Manchester United versus Leeds United. Roy Keane, newly appointed United captain, goes in for a challenge and tears his anterior cruciate ligament. He is on the ground, in serious pain, facing months out of the game. Alf Inge Holland, then of Leeds United, stands over him. According to Keane, Holland accused him of faking the injury. Holland later said he simply told Keane to get up, and as you do with any player on the floor. Keane never forgot it. 4 years. Keane carried that moment across 4 seasons, through a recovery, through 2 Premier League titles, through Champions League campaigns. He didn't act on it. He waited. April 2001. Manchester derby at Old Trafford. Keane and Holland, now of Manchester City, in the same midfield. 72nd minute. Keane drives his studs into Holland's right knee with a challenge that is late, high, and, as Keane himself would later confirm, intentional. He stands over Holland as the Norwegian writhes on the pitch, in a deliberate echo of what happened at Elland Road in 1997. He is sent off. The challenge leaves Holland with damage that means he never plays a full 90 minutes again. Keane received a 3-match ban and a £5,000 fine. Then came the book. In his 2002 autobiography, R. Keane wrote, "I'd waited long enough. I fucking hit him hard. The ball was there, I think. Take that, you kit. And don't ever stand over me again accusing me of fake injuries." The Football Association read the book. They issued an additional 5-match ban and a £150,000 fine for the admission. Keane paid it. He expressed no regret. But Keane committed one act for one reason against one man. What sits above him on this list isn't a single moment. It isn't even a single season. It's a 20-year body of work sustained at the very top of the game. Level 7. God tier. Here's the paradox. Sergio Ramos has 30 career red cards. Sergio Ramos has 0 international red cards. 180 appearances for Spain. Not one sending off. Same rules. Same referee laws. Different competition. Completely different outcome. That is not a coincidence. That is craft. 270 yellow cards. 30 reds. A disciplinary record that leads every list compiled since 2000 by a distance. That would be embarrassing if it weren't also attached to 4 Champions League titles, 2 European Championships, and a World Cup. Ramos is not a cautionary tale about talent wasted on disorder. He is the evidence that discipline and disorder can coexist as a deliberate strategy in the hands of someone who understands the rulebook well enough to operate permanently 1 centimeter over the line. Take the 2018 Champions League final, Liverpool versus Real Madrid. Mohamed Salah, the most dangerous attacker in the game that season, the reason anyone thought Liverpool might actually win, goes down in the 26th minute after a clash with Ramos. The Spaniard appears to trap Salah's arm under his own body weight and bring the Egyptian to the floor in a motion that looks almost like a judo throw. Salah can't continue. Liverpool's most potent threat limps off the pitch and does not return. Liverpool lose. Ramos wins his 4th Champions League. Jurgen Klopp, asked about Ramos years later, said simply, "The action was brutal. He's not my favorite player. No card, no punishment, no consequences." That is the Ramos model. It works in the other direction too. 2 yellows in 42 seconds against Rayo Vallecano in 2012, having already scored. A stamp on Elise's chest while the Portuguese defender was lying on the ground. An elbow to the face of Sergio Busquets during a Copa del Rey Clásico. A straight red for a lunge at Messi in a game Real. We're losing 5-0. 5 Clásico red cards, the record for most sending-offs in European football's top 5 leagues, and still 0 for Spain. When you watch Vinnie Jones, you're watching someone with no plan. When you watch Joey Barton, you're watching a plan that keeps exploding. When you watch Diouf or Costa or Suarez, you're watching talent and self-destruction. When you watch Keane, you're watching a grudge. When you watch Ramos, you're watching a system. That is why he is God tier. You're not watching a villain. You're watching the villain who won. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every controversial football moment that changed the beautiful game forever, click the video on screen